You're wiping that desk. Are you sure it's wiped?
The desk is... can you hear me wiping my desk?
Yes.
Sorry.
I'm gonna have to leave it in. It's the only way I'm going to teach you. I'm going to shame you. Do you know what I could do? I'm not gonna, but I could get all the wiping noises in one bit. So it's just...
Well, you can listen to that, and Malcolm's going to make a song out of that, and that'll be an extra on our Buy Me a Coffee page.
No, that's not been discussed. No, we have to both agree. I am Malcolm Childs.
And I am James Giffins. And we are Just Making Conversation.
The show where we discuss the ins and outs of the model making hobby that we both love so much.
From the greasy sprues to the gloss coats and everything in between, we are going to just make conversation.
Remember, there are other podcasts you can listen to.
Plastic Model Mojo,
The Scale Model Podcast,
Plastic Posse,
On the Bench,
Model Geeks,
Sprue Cutters Union. Or you can head to modelpodcasts.com. Consider leaving a review or 5 stars, as it promotes this podcast to more people to enjoy. Also, consider tossing a coin to us on buymeacoffee.com. It just helps us make content for you. In this episode, we'll be just making conversation about Diorama Semantics. Has the mystery of dioramas driven you away in fear, or has the illusion of a 3D scene left you in awe and just too fearful of trying yourself?
Maybe you've tried, but it just doesn't seem to provide you with the same picture you've imaged. Can it be that complex that you miss the mark, or is it just down to overthinking?
So what makes a diorama? How does a diorama tell a story and provide a clear message with just a small Easter egg to find? When does a vignette become a diorama, or are they just a model on a base? Today's topic, this fine, bright Monday, is Diorama Semantics. James. What are diorama semantics?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me. I've not got an idea.
That's going to be a short podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, please buy us a coffee because that's worth it, right?
So dioramas, well, as you might guess, this might be a subject I like a lot. I might have a little bit to say, but the easiest way to describe a diorama is that it is a 3D scene in which you are telling a story, be it about a piece, person, or place. So let's get what's the word I'm looking for?
Semantics.
Let's get some semantics out of the way. Good idea.
Yeah, that's always a good idea.
Yes.
That's what I always start at parties. I said, right, guys, semantics, here we go. Let's get our definitions sorted out, because there's confusion between diorama and vignettes.
One of the best ways to describe a diorama is that it is a story or situation. It is not tiny, because size does matter. So it is significant amount of combination of scenery and of models and all that sort of stuff. Then that is a diorama.
Oh. So it has to be big.
Well, the size is in the eye of the beholder, as they say. So,
I guess so. Yeah.
Yes, in a way, that's true. However, a vignette is still a story or situation, but it's a smaller base.
Yeah.
With maybe a figure or two, or maybe one vehicle. And this is a vignette. So the easiest way to explain that, I'm going to take the words that I heard from a podcast, funny enough, on the Plastic Model Mojo. And I think it was Dave who explained the difference in a very simple format. And it was something that he had heard. So a vignette is a picture.
Right.
So it's a picture of a person, a picture of a moment, if you like. Whereas a diorama is a story or an explanation of a picture.
Okay. Yeah. So you could imagine a diorama has a bit more presence in time, in that you could see what happened or what is going to happen, perhaps.
Yes.
And a vignette is just like a photograph, a picture.
It's a moment.
Yeah, a snapshot. So you wouldn't have too much going on in a vignette.
No,
I'm guessing.
No, you wouldn't. So, for example, you might have an officer leaning up against a wall with his sergeant's tying his shoelaces or something. You know, that's a vignette.
What's with the time of the laces? Is that a thing? Does that happen?
I'm apparently, yes.
Are they tying them together? Is that what you're talking about? Like doing a little cheeky sneak?
I think it was to make them not move too fast or quickly in the wrong direction.
But no, that's interesting because if he is tying them together and he's got a cheeky grin and there's other people looking around the corner like, ha, would that be a diorama then?
That would then become a diorama if that brings another element to the story. So that picture, if you can imagine, you see the officer and he's having his shoelaces tied up by the sergeant and you grab your camera and take a quick picture and go, oh, that's quite funny. But then once you take the camera away from your eyes, you notice that there's 3 soldiers hiding behind the brick wall and they're all giggling and there may be a rat running along the wall within that story as well. Or another sort of Easter egg might be that the officer is actually from a famous comedy in the UK and the sergeant is Baldric, for example. That's something that you would only notice if you were looking closely. So that's an Easter egg. So an Easter egg is something in which you would look for within a piece. They're just another interest, something else to draw your eye onto the model.
Yes, I remember making a diorama and it was District 9, so sci-fi diorama, and it had bits and pieces just from the film kind of dotted around. And those, I guess, were Easter eggs because the main thing that I was trying to show was the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And there was just extra little bits and pieces for people who were maybe interested in the film and had seen it and would understand.
That's exactly right, because obviously someone that hadn't seen a film wouldn't understand the link, so they would probably miss that. Whereas somebody that knew the film really well went, oh, look at that, he's even got a poster. I remember that being in there. Or like the cat food cans.
Yeah, you remember those, yeah.
Understanding where that came from, you know, those bits of things. So yeah, they're all elements of the story, and that's one of the reasons why I like. I'm a diorama freak. I'm not going to lie, I am, because it takes you off on so many different journeys within your modelling process. It's not just about following those instructions. So yeah, being a rebel, I guess, maybe.
No, not at all. I think it's great because you've got to do lots of different things. It's not just making your vehicle. Then you've got to think about what season is this vehicle in, what's going on. So that you're probably going to put it in a war scene or something. So yeah, kind of backs up the vehicle's existence, which I quite like. You don't go to the cinema to sit and look at a photograph, do you?
No, it would be a very short experience.
Well, it was up for an hour.
Yeah, you wouldn't sit there, would you? You finish popcorn real quick and go.
What Easter eggs do you put in your diorama? So have you got ones that you always plonk in, or are they different every time?
No, I'll be honest. The Easter egg element is something in which is fairly new to me in talking to other modelers that did dioramas and the fact that they quite often did it. So as of yet, there's not really an Easter egg that I've actually put in a diorama yet. But it's something that I want to do. I tend to do little extra details that maybe you wouldn't notice unless you're looking for them, but they're not Easter eggs as such. I mean, like for example, your posters, there's a link to the film. I'd never think that far ahead, if I'm honest.
I mean, there are lots of little tiny things, isn't there, that you could do. One thing I could say is that I leave the seam lines on all my figures. That's my Easter egg. Yeah. So I'm not very good at cleaning them up. But, yes, you noticed. Well done. One guy I know always, when he's painting his aircraft, not to do with dioramas, but he always does a brand new panel that isn't weathered at all, as if that panel had been replaced. I like that because that gives it a bit more realism, doesn't it? You know, and I guess that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think to look at a 3D scene, it can be very overwhelming. You know, you can get a diorama that literally has 2 figures in it, and there's not really a lot going on, but it's about the story. It's about the emotion that's being generated within that story. But there's also other dioramas that would have multiple figures, multiple areas to look at, and an Easter egg would be missed.
Got you.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we mentioned that because I want to encourage people to spend a little bit more time looking at that amazing diorama rather than going, wow, oh my God, that's so much work, and walking past.
Can you put some pictures up of Easter eggs in the Facebook?
Yeah, I've got a couple already lined up to illustrate the thing itself.
Okay, cool. So I don't have to write that down then.
No, it's already on my sheet.
Oh, you are good.
I am.
I'll just put my pen away.
I'm super organised.
You get Easter eggs in films. There's like a little nod to the fans almost in a film, I suppose, or nods to previous work.
Marvel is a good example, isn't it? The writer was always in the film at some point as an extra.
Yeah, there's these little cameos. Do you know every Pixar film has the ball from Luxo Jr., which is a yellow ball with a blue star and a red stripe?
No, I didn't know.
And every film they've done, there's that ball. It's in Toy Story. It's in all the others.
Has he got a special agent that's got that to happen?
Possibly, yeah. And there's loads of other Easter eggs, like the room that Brad Bird did his animation studies in when he was at CalArts. That number is usually the registration plate on the main character's car, or that number will be on a book or something. And they'll
You're a mind of information.
Yes, well, it's certainly about Pixar films. Yeah, I love animation. I've got kids, haven't I?
True, that's true. Let's get back to the subject of dioramas. Are you aware of the formula, shall I say, of dioramas?
Are you talking about the golden circle?
Among other things, yes.
Shouldn't everyone be looking into the diorama? Or can people be looking into space that leads the eye in? Is that exactly what you're talking about or not? I know. You're looking at me like you're worried.
Where's he going? I have no idea about this. I'm learning something. No, you're right. Yeah.
You can lead the viewer by where everybody in the scene is looking to where they should look to, and try not to have everyone looking out of the diorama because it doesn't give you a point of reference. Is that what you're talking about?
Wasn't what I had in mind, but yes. Shep Payne was a very good dioramist, and he was a gentleman who made models for Monogram and Revell, I believe. He made the models and then made dioramas for those models to sit in, and they were all part of the advertising for the hobby and the manufacturer, but also it was one of the things in which he was very, very, very good at. You can say that Shep Payne had a certain way of doing it. You had Verlinden that had a certain way of doing it. But the main rules that I would impart, because I can never, if I'm honest, I can never quite remember who said what and all that and the other. And I haven't got that in front of me to refer to.
Well, people are here to listen to you. So, James, as a dioramist, what rules do you follow?
What I would tend to do is I would always tend to have something on a slant. Like, for example, if you've got a building with a road, put the road and the buildings on a slight angle to the base rather than being too formalised. What you need is you just slightly off to an angle, cut a little bit of the road off, whatever, because then it gives you a sense of depth. It gives you a sense of where your stories are, etc., with you on the base. And it's just, for the human eye, very pleasant.
If it's all lined up straight and everything and your road's perfectly straight, it looks man-made. Unless, of course, just trying to think, unless it's, of course, like a car in a garage, then the car would be straight back to the wall. But then, of course, the wall doesn't have to be straight to the base, does it? So
depends where you're taking the picture. So in theory, now I'm sort of going to trample on what I just said. If you're trying to create a particular picture, that picture happens to be a frontal view of a subject, then yeah, you can do it, I guess. But the rule I've always followed, which I think is part of Shep Payne's sort of way of doing things, was that to put things on a slight angle, it meant you could actually show off more of what you were doing within that story if you do it so it's sort of like facing you. And it also makes the viewer sort of walk around a little bit more to view it. I recently did a diorama, funny enough, where I've not followed this rule. And it was a dock scene where the dock is literally...
with the patient?
No, not doctor and nurse. A dock as in water with a landing craft.
Sorry.
That's a whole different podcast.
You said dock scene? Sorry, go on.
It's a harbour scene, effectively. That's what it's meant to be. But the dock wall is the same distance from the edge. I've not made it an angle at any point. It's because I had a landing craft and I didn't want to make it too wide.
That's right. Yeah, there's corners sticking out, wouldn't you? If you put that landing craft on sideways, and it kind of makes sense that you would do that anyway, because a harbour is long and thin. That pier, I do remember you talking about, because I was asking you what was on the other side of that pier, on the other side, and you said it was a brick wall. But it was hard for me to imagine it because it wasn't there.
In that respect to that dock scene, I had decided that I would probably create a picture that would go behind it that would give a further impression of distance, etc. But I didn't, because the problem with doing that is when you put a picture, you're putting a 2D image against a 3D image. And it doesn't always work. In fact, it rarely works, if I'm honest. So that's why I chose not to do it. But there are occasions where you would use it and where you wouldn't use that angled across your baseboard theory. But also the other thing as well with it is by doing that, like I said earlier, it gives you the opportunity for you to create areas within the diorama of interest. So, for example, if you have a square base and you have your tank angled from the bottom corner towards the back corner, you've then got the ability to build on the other edges a story or elements of your story in which you might not see otherwise. And the idea of that is to try and encourage the viewer to seek out, like we were talking about earlier about Easter eggs, to seek out what is the story? What are you trying to tell me? So behind our tank, we've got a couple of soldiers hiding, and we've got a couple of soldiers running down the other side of the tank, and they're under attack, but they're not quite sure where it's coming from. And that's where your eye line, your figures, if they're all looking, trying to find out where would that shot come from, and they're all looking in a particular direction, it then draws the person along the story and start looking into the house for the sniper, for example, that's very carefully concealed in the house. That's something which is quite important, I feel, for people that make dioramas. Is it's not something to get stuck on too much, but the way I make dioramas is I try to put something of interest not just in the centre.
Yeah.
For that tank, for example, I probably would put it maybe near the front.
Yeah.
So they're all looking away from the viewer in a direction of a house.
Yeah. You're creating space off the scene, aren't you?
By taking that model away from the middle, as you say, you're enlarging the base without actually meaning to. You're stretching the boundaries of the viewer and their perceptions of what it is you're telling.
I think it makes sense. The simplest thing I can think of explaining that is a guy he built a race car, it's a NASCAR, and he had flat bases to display them. They were all in the middle of this racetrack base. Each one was separate. Fantastic models, but to show them off on the base, I felt that if he had just put it so it was kind of just a little bit further back down the road, it would look like it was going into that space because it's a race car. Or if it was a slight angle, maybe it was taking a slide around that corner or something. And it would just give it a little bit more action and movement. Yeah, I think the best dioramas don't feel like they're still.
Yeah.
If you can get movement into something somehow, and not just literally have movement in it, like a spinning propeller or I don't know, something else, then I think you're winning. Bit of kind of movement in there is going to help you to show the magic of what a diorama can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, I was looking at a book today, and the reason I was actually looking through it was a bit of research, strangely, and it was a picture of a workshop, an airplane in it, a jet engine is obviously being worked on. You've got all the panels open, all the engines open, etc., etc. But as you look at the picture, you can see that there are 4 different stories going on within the story. Overwhelming story is that, this jet's in for a bit of repair, okay? But then you've got the engineer with an engine panel open talking to another engineer going, well, I'm not sure that's wired properly. You've got another one scratching his head because he can't find the right spanner. There's lots going on, and the difference displaying your model and telling a story is so vast. And it's a little bit like, I know I'm being a bit fluffy with this, but there are some artists that will make a painting, and within that painting there are stories within the story, but most people only see the main figure. But if you look carefully, there's lots of other things going on.
Yeah.
And that is what a diorama is. It's exactly the same. It is a bit artistic.
Yeah.
You have a lot of freedom to push those boundaries, to do more than what you normally would. And a lot of people get stuck on, I'm going to do a diorama of this scene that I've seen in this picture. You could sort of argue that actually you're trying to make a diorama from a vignette.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah, rather than a story that you heard or read.
I've always described dioramas to people, or the reason I like dioramas so much, really, I suppose, is that a picture tells a story, of course it does. But the problem is it only tells a story from that moment, from that viewpoint. Whereas a diorama is the person standing next to the cameraman taking the picture. He can see the whole story.
So each figure in your diorama could be a separate vignette. So if you put all your vignettes together, you make a diorama.
Absolutely. That's exactly true.
You could do one day, maybe make a diorama where you could take the pieces apart and then say, look, these are my vignettes.
Oh.
And then you put those into a competition, and then they say, oh, you've won the vignette. And you're, now it's a diorama. Put them all together. You could. I'm not saying you would or will or have the time.
Can't believe you just challenged me to that. I mean, obviously that's something stupid that I would do, because I'm just like, well, yeah, I could just do a vignette, or maybe 6 that go together. That wouldn't complicate things anymore.
6 vignettes. They do that in war games displays. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
So the figure will come out. Sorry, let's mix it now. Warhammer, I think I've seen it in, where they'll have the figures and they're on little bases, which are a vignette in itself, isn't it? You know, a little war gamer base. So you have the figure, and then that base will then go into another base with holes cut in it, and that base has got details and everything else that goes with the base of the figure. So once they're all in the scene, in the holes, it makes up a diorama, which is really cool, really clever. So obviously you can still, use them as game pieces, which they're supposed to be for, and then you can also display them in. That's a really clever way of doing it.
It's not something I thought of until you said it, and I was just like, oh yeah, no, you're right. That is exactly what they do. Yeah,
but you could, couldn't you? You could have. I don't know what you'd do, but do something clever. There you go.
Answers on a postcard.
It would just upset the IPMS judges. So is it a diorama or is it a separate vignette? I
feel it's important to point out, this is something that comes up an awful lot at competitions and potentially, I suppose, at clubs. Not that I'm a member of a club that I physically go to, but I can imagine it comes up. But I've certainly heard it at competitions at model shows where someone has made a piece, put it into a section within the competition. The F14 is really nice, and the fact it's sat on the tarmac and they've got a bit of grass, and it looks really good. But he's entered it into airplanes, and it's the airplane that's judged, not the base. The same mistake happens the other way around as well, where someone makes something like that and goes, well, it's now a diorama. I'll put it into a diorama. But it's not actually telling a story. It's just an airplane sat on a tarmac. I've seen that happen a few times. And people get quite hung up about it. And again, this is something that I've heard on other podcasts and other places. When you build your tank or your plane or whatever, should it be displayed on a base if I am displaying it for just the purpose that is a tank? Yeah?
Yeah.
Should I have it on a tarmac road, or should I just plonk it onto the table and that's it? And the answer is, realistically, I think everything should have a base, unless it is something that should look like a toy.
Yes, I agree. I think it's like a picture frame for a painting, let's say, if you want to go down that road. Your frame kind of matches, your frame needs to sell the picture, doesn't it? And that's what I guess that's what your base is, especially if it just needs something to sit on that it would normally sit on or stand on or whatever. It also helps with the colouring as well. I don't know if you know what caustics are. Yeah, if you put it on a concrete base, it's going to reflect the colour of that concrete back onto your model somewhat. So that'll also help it. And I defy any judge who's judging a model to not include a base in their consideration.
It's not in the rules. It's it is in the rules. Basically, you cannot include it in. But I find the human nature is that when something is presented to you on a base, it's more pleasant than seeing it sat on a tablecloth.
Yeah.
Plonked on
and if you have two models that are doing very, very well, and they're both the same, and one's got a base, one hasn't, it's going to be a tipping point, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure people disagree, but how I would see it as if I was judging something, someone's got that extra effort. Very interesting, though, isn't it? I know a guy who's only just recently got into modelling. Well, I say that. I keep saying that about him, but it's been about 3 years now. He would build tanks, and then he would be done. He would build a tank, and that's it, and he put it on the shelf. And then he started to build tanks that had bases for war games.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bases started to become more elaborate and things like that. And then he realized that he could actually tell a little story with the way the vehicle was placed on the base. And he would always put an angle on the base so that the vehicle was tipped towards you so you could see it a bit better, or tipped away from it. So usually when you're looking at a model, you're looking at it from the top, a high point looking down. So he would make it so that the front was lifted, so it would be kind of tipped up towards you, which is cool. And it kind of refined his style. And now I see a photograph of one of his pieces of work, and I know for a fact that's who it is, because that's the way he does the bases. It's just brilliant. Love the stuff. I'll see if I can put a picture in.
Yeah, be nice.
I'll write that down.
Yes, write that down.
Where's my fucking pen? Once a month I go, right, everybody in the family meeting. Where are my pens? And then everybody goes,
oh, there's a pen in my bedroom under my pillow. I snapped one.
One in the fish tank. There's one buried in the garden.
One on the roof.
There's one on the moon.
I stuck one to the back of the car.
it's never like,
Oh, I used it to pen you a letter, Father.
and then everyone brings their pens back and they're very, very sorry. It's because I have a place for my pens, and that's why we've covered vignettes, we've covered dioramas, we've covered presenting a model. Okay, riddle me this.
Okay.
Right? With everything we've just said, is a here we go. Is a railway layout a diorama?
Oh. Diorama elements, yes.
If it's got elephants in it, then yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, if it's elephants, then it's a track going through a zoo or a plane in the elephant reserve.
It's one of those zoo trains.
Zoo trains, yeah. We've not seen them.
You know, with yes, like land trains. You know, when you go to a zoo and to get the trip from one end to the other because you can't be able to walk, you get the train, and then yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, yes, it is. And that is one of the reasons why you tend to find a lot of model makers maybe come from model railway world because they've done their little dioramas or layouts. And then once they finish their layout, don't know what to do with it because all it's doing is a train going round and round in a circle. Maybe. That's a pointed comment, and I apologise for anyone that happens to like railways.
Well, we do that all the time. We don't have anyone that likes railways that listens to this podcast.
Yeah, no, I don't see the point of railway layouts.
Yeah.
But to watch a train go round and round in circles, no interest in that.
What if they just turned it off and they just pulled the plug out and it was sat still? You'd be like, oh, no, that's...
Well, it would be a diorama then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
But the funny part to that is, if you turned it off and the engines didn't move, then I would either get on the layout and push them around making noises, or I would go turn it back on. What's the point? You've just done it to me, haven't you? You do this every episode.
I do, sorry.
I make this point, this is how I feel. However, thinking about it a little bit more, I don't believe myself anymore. Thank you.
I have this point that I want to make. Now I thought about it, I changed my mind.
My dad's into model railways in quite a big way. However, he doesn't have a layout. I keep telling him to do it. To the point even that I say to him, I'll come and help you do the layout. I'll come and help you build the layout because I'd get a kick out of it.
That would be awesome.
He won't say it to me, but I think he's of the same opinion. He doesn't understand why it goes round and round, and that's it. He wants something that's continuously evolving.
Yeah, what you could do. It depends what you're making. I know you don't see the point of having something that goes round and round, but a lot of layouts, they don't go round and round. They go left and right. They go from one siding to the other side, and then they come back.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. My God, I cannot understand. I've been to railway shows. I go with my father purely because I want to spend some time with my dad and it's of interest to him and I'm willing to tolerate it for however long it is. Oh my God, a timetable on a layout. Really?
I'm not talking about that. That's fine. That's fine. That's however they want to do it. But what I'm talking about, if you have the love of a particular station, so the station, we won't mention the station you work out, but let's say we were going to make a station of where you work. You would want to recreate in a way that everyone would recognize where that was. And to make it a bit more railway-ish, you'd want to have a train going in and out of that station, wouldn't you? Or going past the station.
I'll be honest with you. There is a layout that I'm happy to name. Hertford East Station. There is a layout that it's terminus. Basically, it's the end of the line, but it's a very beautiful Victorian station. And that's been made into a layout. And that is literally that. You got 4 lines going in. It's a bit of shunting.
Excuse me.
I did say shunting. Like you say, it doesn't go round and round in circles. It is literally just come in and go out.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I love about it is I'm familiar with the station, but as a diorama, it's phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's so much going on. There's so much storytelling going on. And I'll give, we've gone off on a tangent, but I'll give model railways their due. I have, not that long ago, been to Hamburg and seen the world's biggest railway layout.
Bingo.
Yeah, I may have said that before. And that's fantastic. I personally like the airport, planes fly in, taxi around and all that and the other. Interests me because things are always moving, but it's more of a story going on.
Yes. And there's Easter eggs as well, isn't there?
Oh my God, there's so many Easter eggs. There is Easter egg upon Easter egg upon Easter egg.
Yeah. So you could make a layout without a train on it, would be fine with you.
Well, I suppose really a diorama that I've made that hasn't got a train on it is a layout just waiting for a train to be put on it.
So is a diorama a layout just waiting for any train to be put on it?
I'm sorry, I'm going to draw a line. You cannot, as a dioramist, you cannot say I am a train enthusiast. I'm so sorry. My anorak is firmly put away in the cupboard and I am not going out spotting. Not this time.
Just making conversation, James.
all our American chums are going, he's going on about that anorak again. What on earth is that about? Anyway.
I imagine it's not just American chums. I mean, our Maltese chums, our Canadian chums, Australian. Actually, they might know what an anorak is in Australia. Oh, answers on a postcard. You know what an anorak is. The reason that I wanted to talk about the railways is because of the, as you said before, I think, a crossover in techniques. Yeah?
Yes.
The weathering and the rain effects and the water effects and the flocking. I said flocking. And all that. I'm sure we said it before on the podcast, is this massive crossover between the two. And essentially, a layout is a diorama with a moving train on it. Or lots and lots of little vignettes.
If I'm being fair to the railway enthusiasts, it's something in which they should take from us dioramas is how to make their layouts be more interesting. It's not all about the train and the track, is it?
You've ever been to Pendon Museum before? Railway Museum, Oxford?
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, next time you're ever up this way, we should take a trip up there, you and I.
After this podcast, we'll be allowed to.
Oh, in a couple of weeks, yes. Because of COVID, or do you mean because of what we said?
No, because of what we've said so far.
Or maybe you have to put a fake beard on and I have to wear a wig. Because our pictures will be up behind the till.
On the wanted list.
Yeah, do not leave idiots in.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine it saying that. Wanted for crimes against layouts. No, it's great. They have It's meant to be for the kids, but honestly, it's awesome. They have a clipboard where you put a piece of paper on it, and it has all a list of different things that you can find on all of the layouts. They have that.
Ah, yes.
So you'll be looking for the red windmill, or you'll be looking for the green tender, or something or other, and you can tick it all off. It's just great.
Mm-hmm.
And they have loads of steps and stools and things for the kids to be able to stand up if you're, short, which kids are. But they are. Penda Museum is a museum of old railway layouts. So people have made amazing, huge layouts, and they have taken them and stored them when the person who made them has passed away.
Gotcha, yeah.
They're just incredible. They're just absolutely amazing, all of them. And they repair them and they keep them going, and all the electrics are redone, and the motors in the trains are changed, and they upgrade them so they're all Bluetooth enabled and all sorts. It's really cool. Yeah, we should go up there. Maybe you'll come out with buying a train.
When I've been to the shows with my dad, there is a lot of crossover. There's a lot of things there that I've seen, which I've used, materials that I've used, and things like that, definitely. And the funny part is it's the other way around as well, because you mentioned earlier weathering.
Yeah.
Now, it's actually not. It's a fairly new thing to weather your trains, because the natural order of things is that you keep your trains pristine, and that you can sell them on. You can get good money for trains that are like they were when you bought them.
Oh.
However, the actual weathering, so when you've got your carriages and you want to muddy them up and all that sort of stuff, that has become, I guess, in the last 5-6 years, maybe. Well, certainly to my knowledge, anyway. It's become a massive thing, and the products that they are selling to the guys and girls are amazing, and they're products in which we didn't have in our hobby, in model making, which have crossed over, and vice versa.
Maybe go visit your railway layout supplier.
Well, we obviously use a lot of flock and stuff like that. That all comes from that mainly. But yeah, there is a lot of crossover, and it is quite interesting, actually. And there is a company that I'm aware of. Yeah, it's the only reason I know this story, really, is my father was reading in a magazine about it a few years ago. And there is a company that you can send your trucks to be weathered, and he sends them back.
Oh, my gosh. I could do that. Do that all day. I love weathering.
Funny enough, that's exactly how it came up in conversation. I found the ideal job for you, James. Weather railway carriages.
You're like, right, well, how much weathering do you want? How much rain has it been through? What's the ground like? Is it clay? Is it sand? What is it?
Could you imagine? The world would be your oyster.
There is a difference, isn't there, between people who want a vehicle to display because they like it, and then there's people who want to learn to make that vehicle and enjoy that process of making that vehicle and to display it because of what their skill level is rather than what the vehicle is. I come from kind of we're going way on a tangent, but I come from a kind of position where I'm kind of both. I'll build a vehicle I like, but I really enjoy building it, putting it together, and then I've got the thing, and I go, wow, look, that's a cool thing. As you say, people who will pay to paint railway carriages, so people you can pay to paint your Warhammer figures, commission painters.
Yeah,
which I find strange because that's the hobby. That'd be like going to archery, saying, yeah, I love archery. Would you just go and shoot that bullseye for me? Oh, thanks very much. Here's a tenner.
Yeah, well, yes, that's true. But if you think about toy soldiers, a lot of toy soldiers are already painted. All you're doing is just moving them around, which is no different to war gaming, is it? In fact, I'm sure it is a war gaming of some description. But, toy soldiers and all that sort of stuff, you can go and buy. It's all you're doing literally is take them out of the box and maybe moving them around or just leaving them in the box looking at them. Yeah.
Do you mean toy soldiers like from like a box of plastic soldiers?
Yeah, so like from Britain's, the famous figure maker of toys and giraffes.
I'm with you. Yeah, they do an ostrich.
And other farm-like animals. There are people that will specifically collect those sort of things. And there is a show in London, funny enough, twice a year, one at the beginning of the year and one December time. It's a little show, but it's a great little show to go to because, again, there's a crossover of bits to do with our hobby, our model making, etc.
What is the show? Well,
it's called Toy Soldier, funny enough.
Oh, I see.
The London Toy Soldier Association. Can't remember exactly where it was. It's in London. It's in the north part of London somewhere, but I can't think where. But I will find a flyer to put in the show notes. One of the other attractions to the subject in which we're talking about today, which is dioramas.
Oh, was it? Right.
Yeah. Is the element of scratch building. So people that really like PE and extra detail and all that sort of stuff are quite often attracted to dioramas because they can go off on a tangent and create door hinges and bath taps. Bingo. And numerous other goodies. I guess to a point as well, there's a little bit of engineering involved if you're going to do some sort of structure or land work, bridge.
Yeah.
Not sure you can say engineering when you're doing a seascape, but, there's lots of forms of it, I suppose.
Well, no, there is, because you need to be able to keep all that resin in.
Yes.
That takes a level of skill and confidence to have, all the painted beautifulness, and then you just go pour resin all over it.
Yes.
Yeah, there definitely is a level of engineering and skill with all those sort of things. I agree. There's many, many skills that you would need if you're doing a diorama, other than just to be able to put a tape together, paint it, and make it look nice. There's extra bits. You got to make foliage and grass and hills and hillocks and rocks and cliffs and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah,
and also trying to weather the figures and the tanks to fit in the scene as well.
Yes.
So many times I've seen people put their tank on a base and they've used a certain brown for the dirt, but the tank sat on the desert. Just irks me a bit.
But you got to remember that when you're looking at a diorama, you're only looking at a portion of the story. The other side of that diorama might be the colour dirt that's on that tank.
It could be, yeah. If that's the point of the story. Yes. If the diorama is called The Hidden Puddle.
Yeah. Dirt transfer.
The Hidden Dip. Or Where's All This Sand Come From? Or something like that. Then, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. This is the main point I would make about dioramas is don't follow my example and plan your dioramas from start to finish. Otherwise, you'll have wrong colour paint on your model simulating the wrong colour sand. You're absolutely right. It's so easy to see where someone has built a model, done amazingly well with it, and then stuck it on a base that's an afterthought. Not that we criticise anyone for it, but yes. And I think also the other side to that as well is, I think that's where I get my pleasure from dioramas as well, is that I will build a kit of some description, but I've already decided how that's going to go into a diorama. And the main reason for that is it gives me the ability to display it different to anybody else. So, for example, I built a Huey helicopter. But how many Huey helicopters do you see hanging from a tree? Not many.
There's a film that has that.
There is quite a few films, yes. But so that
I can't think of any films at all, apart from Jurassic Park, but that wasn't Huey.
Yeah. There's Rambo,
Con Air,
Predator, Air America.
Yeah.
Any of our listeners can think of any more, there may be a brownie point or two. So get your answers in. That's another reason why I do them, is because it gives me the ability to do something a little bit different to what's in the box. I like to follow the instructions, but after I get to a certain point, I want to be a rebel and do something slightly different.
So you look at the paint instructions and they are, do not paint them like this.
Yes.
Always trying to find other things to do. And that's where the aftermarket stuff comes into, isn't it?
Yeah.
You start looking through the Hannants list and the Scalemates list of other bits and pieces you can get for that kit.
And funny enough, just this week I have been doing exactly that and trying to find 1/48th workshop environment.
No, not in 1/48th you won't. In resin, you might.
Forget it. No, absolutely forget it. Can't find any. All I can find is some spanners. That's it.
Well, I have to do some scratch building, buddy.
Yep. That's part of the joy of bringing together the scene, isn't it, I suppose?
Well, yeah. You talk a good diorama. I do enjoy doing dioramas too. Yeah, good fun. Very labour intensive, though. I don't have much space to spare, which is why I'm painting my figures at the moment. Favourite diorama? Have you got one? one that you want to describe and tell me why it's your favourite?
Oh, I've got several.
One favourite.
Oh, has it got to be one?
Looking at the time. Yes. If I had a knife to your throat. Oh God, that's a bit dark. If I had to press you and say you have to choose one diorama, what diorama is your favourite? What sticks out?
It'd have to be a diorama that was made by Claude Joachim. It's in relation to Battle of the Bulge, and he has built a castle of Clairvaux, which in itself is enormous and amazing. And, you know, you could just spend forever walking around looking in all the nooks and crannies. Not happy with that. He's then built the village to go with it.
Wow.
The village and the park, the river. Absolutely amazing. And I remember this coming over to this country and being at a model show. It's Folkestone, actually.
Folkestone Model Show.
No, it's not.
Model show near Folkestone.
It's a big figure model show.
Oh, militaire?
Yes, that's it. Scale Militaire. But it was on display there, and it was just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. Just fantastic work. Loads and loads of figures and buildings that have got bomb damage, shell damage, a cellar, I remember specifically, having its own little story in there.
Yeah.
Just absolutely phenomenal. As far as I know, he's still building it.
Wow. What's the story of the castle then?
Basically, it was an area that was to the American lines and captured the town. As I remember, it's the story of them recapturing it. So
it was a battlefield, was it?
Yeah, so it was basically a battlefield, but they wanted to show the history of the area and what happened. Within the story that he's telling, there is the castle, and he's got GIs playing pool in the chapel and so much stuff. But I'll put some pictures up and a link, actually, because it is well worth going to have a look at.
Yeah, it does look amazing. What scale is it? I can't work it out.
1/35.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 1/35.
That's beautiful.
It is.
It's absolutely massive.
It is enormous. And the detail work that was done.
Would you be, is this something that you could do? Is it, because he's obviously built every single tree. He's made every single building. He's spent time on every single hinge and tap.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think your mojo or interest in life would dwindle if this was the project you were working on?
It's difficult for me to answer that, really, because to do this particular model, he's obviously had to plan that a lot. I generally just have a picture in my mind and try and follow that picture. And when I get to as close to it as I can, that's probably when I finish. I would love the challenge of doing something like that. Yes, it would be a lifetime work.
Yeah, years of work.
Oh my God, yeah, 100, yeah, literally years. I guess he must have had some help somewhere along the line. I can't imagine he did it all himself, but he may have.
Maybe he did. Depends on what space he has and how much money he had and how much time he had.
I know that when they brought it over to England, it did break down into parts, especially the village. You know, you could tell by the way the roads were that it broke down. But then yeah, it'd have to go into boxes.
But I imagine he started with one building.
Yes.
He said, I'm going to make this building from this scene, you know, with bullet holes and things like that. And then he thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, it really kind of needs this and this to make it more of a diorama, to be able to tell more of a story. A building on its own, I guess, is a vignette, maybe, and then a village of buildings is a diorama.
The first building he would have built would be the castle.
Oh, right.
And within that castle, there's so many things going on. There's story on layer on layer on layer of stories.
Oh, there's people in there, isn't there? So.
Yeah, that is a diorama. Then I think he decided that he shouldn't really leave the rest of the village out because there were elements of the story that he wanted to tell which were outside of the castle.
Yeah,
and also, if I'm honest with you, I remember looking at that and thinking I could never achieve that sort of detail. I could never achieve that look on anything I do. And I certainly have followed that desire to be able to do that. Like I mentioned before, where we were talking about bath taps and hinges and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's just awesome. Absolutely awesome. And one thing I will mention as well is I'm going to be cheeky and give you another diorama, but it's really quick, this one. when I was very little in America. It was in a room behind the shop, which was telling the history, the American Civil War in this area where we were at. And it was very small, 1/72 sort of scale, but it had flashing lights and all sorts of stuff.
Did it have a train running around it?
There were no trains, but there were moving cavalry.
What? Did they have wheels?
No, they might have been on a train track.
Oh, I need to see this now. I need to see it. Do you have a video of it?
I may just have an old picture somewhere that I can take a picture of it.
Cool. I'll write it down. So I'm glad you asked, because my favourite diorama that speaks to me, because people ask me all the time, pulling me up in the street and say, and I need to speak to you, Malcolm, find out what.
Malcolm, what's your favourite diorama?
I'm glad you asked, because it's called the Tamiya Shop. It's by a chap called Takuji Yamada. A fantastic model maker, does lots of really intricate work. This piece particularly is set in a model shop, a Tamiya model shop with loads of Tamiya kits. It's is it 1/24 scale or is it 1/35?
It's either 1/24 or 1/16, I would think.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go with 1/24. Yeah, it's basically a boy peering through the glass at a display of tanks in a model shop, and the model shop owner, I assume, is carrying a large Tamiya box of a tank, Panzer Kampfwagen, I think. Either the shop owner's like, oh, that boy's here again, here he is, looking around all the models and just making a nuisance of himself. Let's call him James. Or that's his father, and he's buying the boy a kit, or he's buying himself a kit, but he's buying the boy a kit, and the boy hasn't seen that yet, looking at the models in the display case. It's amazing. There's a little display of wood, and then there's obviously the display case full of tanks and cars, and then there's the display of actual model kits in that scale, all lined up on the shelf. What's interesting, I just noticed, we're talking about being off angles. You can see the whole thing is slightly off an angle as well. It's not square to the base, is it?
No.
It's, but it's amazing. Just brilliant. A model of a model shop.
A model of a model maker in a model shop.
Yeah. Each of those little tanks in there are masterpieces inside a display case on a diorama. Oh, it's brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Just the work in there is just brilliant. We've all been to a model shop like that in the old days. Wouldn't be the same now, would it? It would be someone sitting on a computer,
yes,
scrolling.
Yeah, and probably looking at you going, bear with.
Or just a Google screen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There's a couple of dioramas, similar sort of stories. That one, very, very clever with the actual story being told.
Yeah, it's glorious. I love it.
That's a good choice. I like that.
1/24 scale tiger on the top there.
Yeah.
I wonder if he'd even tried to make some sprues. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be cool. So I have a challenge to our listeners. Why don't you head over to our Facebook page and post up your favourite dioramas to let us be awed and inspired by your choices. That'd be super cool. So that would be the Just Making Conversation Facebook page. Yeah, that'd be really interesting, because these two dioramas, I'm now thinking of loads of them.
Yeah.
Loads and
Yeah,
loads.
absolutely. That'd be great. Yeah, please do that. That'd be good.
And also, when you do that, can I ask a favour? Tell us how it's inspired you. Tell us what it has done to your model making. Is there a diorama, for example, that made you or inspired you to become a modeler?
Mm-hmm.
Or something along those lines? Yeah, let us know. It'd be really interesting to see just how powerful dioramas are.
Yeah, absolutely. 500 words or less.
Yes. Yeah, no long stories.
I can hear the music. Talking about long stories, I think it's time to wrap up, mate.
It is that time. Dioramas are just a viewpoint of a moment in time, imagined or fact. A type of storytelling that requires more than just a quick drawing or two.
So spending time Bringing to life your model in that moment often allows you the freedom to bring to life that old tank or plane with so much more. A chance for you to tell a story and stretch the boundaries of the viewer's imagination, but also a chance to hide a few surprises in the form of an Easter egg. It's not always about making a scene.
You've been listening to Just Making Conversation with James Skiffins
And Malcolm Childs. Follow us on Facebook, where we post photos, updates, and other nonsense.
Let us know what you are just making and what your thoughts are on the conversation on this episode.
We have to thank our supporters who we dearly appreciate.
Please support us on
buymeacoffee.com.
So it's a goodbye from me.
That's a goodbye from me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye and take care. What?